What's up, everybody? I am Anthony Ficarra, and this is the Financial Advisory Podcast. So this is our first episode. Lots to get into. Want to start off by saying thanks for everybody who inspired me to do this. This was a long time coming. It's probably been years that I've wanted to do this, and you get enough people around you that support you and want you to do well. They keep on pushing you and say, "Hey, man, why don't you have a podcast? Why don't you have a podcast?" You're being on all these podcasts, have your own podcast. So to those of you who pushed me, this is your fault. Hopefully it's a good thing. I have some really high hopes for this whole thing. I really think this is going to go to we're going to look back at episode 1. We're all going to laugh at how far we've come. I think we have a pretty cool studio right now, pretty badass. But I think that one day this is going to be a huge thing that, I won't have to hear fucking cars going by and fucking trains going by. But for right now, we do. So if you hear a train go by, is what it is. Keeps the rent down. So without further ado, let's jump into our sponsors. So immediately when I launched this thing, I had some support, like I told you, right? So I already had sponsors that were, I don't say they were lining up to do this, but they were on board immediately. Simple text message, "Hey, bro, this is what I'm doing. What do you think?" And immediately, "Yes, dude, how can I help you?" So, and the cool thing is I'm going to get into individually here, but they're both products I already was using. In fact, the products you guys see here was for my personal stash. I've got some shit coming that hasn't gotten here yet, but it's going to be really cool when it gets here. So that just shows you I was already using this shit. So first thing, tequila. Those of you who know me, see the bottle's already gone, right? I love tequila. I'm not a big drinker. I'm not an alcoholic, I promise. But when I do drink, I enjoy tequila. Occasionally maybe Tito's lemonade is my go-to and I'm out and about. But enjoying alcohol at a very little bit is tequila. So Telson tequila. Cheers. And you sip it. You don't slam it. It's for rookies. Telson tequila. Funny story. This is a brand that I found in Las Vegas at a restaurant that I'm not going to disclose the restaurant. I think they're kind of separated, but I don't know. Nacho Daddy. I don't know. I can't remember. He mentions not saying something or disclosing. So whatever. Point is, the restaurant is called Nacho Daddy. You walk in, it's a badass place. It's basically any entree you can get at any other restaurant. They have that, but on a bed of nachos. So surf and turf, chicken fajita, cheeseburger, right? Fucking lobster, shrimp, all that shit, but on a bed of nachos. It's a super cool place. But the most important thing is they have this tequila as their house tequila. So I don't know if the owners own it together or what the correlation is. Maybe that's what he was trying to, I don't know. But it's their house tequila. Very good friend of mine, Mr. Kerry King, who I am near and dear with, very close with. When I go out and visit him, we go to Raiders games together. Our Nacho Daddy stop is a must. Every time I'm in Las Vegas with him, we go to Nacho Daddy. So he found it by accident, and he fell in love with the tequila. And he's got a really good sense of what good tequila is like, and hence how I got trained on tequila. I fell in love with it. So for the longest time, you could only get the tequila in Las Vegas at that restaurant and a couple stores nearby, right? Local stores. So I would literally shove 2 or 3, 5 of these bottles in my suitcase, fly home with them. Allegedly. I'm not sure what the regulations are on that, but I would allegedly put bottles of tequila in my suitcase and fly home with them. So would he. So we would basically bootleg our own shit back to Colorado and the state he lives in. And that's how I got this here now. But going forward, I believe there's a website you can get to. We're going to have all that shit for you guys soon. We'll have a discount code. It's really good. A lot of friends I've turned on to tequila. Every brand I've turned them on to, like, oh, this is really good. Because most people think tequila is fucking Patron, and Patron is trash. So, great tequila. I'm kind of rambling now, but this is very good. And the other sponsor I want to get into is coffee, Livewire Caffeine Co. So, once again, if you've been following me at all for a while, I've been sending this to most of my new clients. I met this guy at a convention, the Lineman Rodeo, back in, I think, October, and Brandon and I hit it off well. I would basically get a new client with my day job, send them a care package. "Hey, man, thanks for being a client. Here's your coffee." So again, once I reach out to these guys and I'm like, "Hey, man, what do you think? Got this podcast coming. Could you sponsor it?" Same thing, down from Jump Street. So those are my first 2 official sponsors, and I could not be happier to have them. The last sponsor I want to bring up is moving company, Alpine Moving Company. Actually, the producer Ace, he owns the company. So If I could say a word or two about the company, go ahead, Ace.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, we're excited for this podcast. This is the first episode. We have a lot of guests coming in really quickly, so a lot of great content that's going to be coming in within, the next week or so. But yeah, Alpine Moving Company is a great local moving company. We do pretty much everything from residential to commercial moving. We're also an agent for National Van Lines, so that means we can move anybody anywhere inside the continental United States, as well as Canada and Mexico. So if you have friends or family that need moving or would like to move, feel free to contact us. We'll have a discount code posted attached here below as well. And without further ado, let's get started.
Yeah, so there we go. We've got 3 sponsors. Just winging it, man. We barely know what the fuck we're doing, Ace, but we got this. We got 3 sponsors. So
I'm excited.
I'm excited too, because I think it's just the beginning. These people are really cool. They're very supportive, and I've got something people want to hear about. So I think this is going to go really well, really quickly. So that being said, let's get into a little bit of story of the origin of this podcast. Origin stories are fucking awesome. If you're a history nerd, which I hated history in high school, but as I got older, I thought it was really cool. Especially like heavy metal, some of my favorite bands. Like hearing about how my favorite band formed is super cool. I love that shit. Like Metallica, they met in a newspaper back when newspapers were a thing, right? And, Slayer, Carrie and Jeff were, walking in and out of the same rehearsal place, and they met each other, and the rest is history, right? So like cool shit happens, and usually it's random. And it's not always luck. I hate to use the word luck because it's like opportunity, preparation equals luck, right? That's life. But like this podcast specifically, so if you guys saw my Instagram story, we had a co-host. We started this with a co-host. And I was super pumped for that. Met him organically. In fact, the story was he had a podcast, saw him on Instagram locally. We followed each other, and I hit him up to like, hey, man, love to be on your podcast. What could we do? He said, hey, let's set up a phone call, man. Like, let's talk. I'm like, okay, cool. So thinking about the phone call, we started talking about it, and I kind of could tell that the phone call wasn't about me being on his podcast. It quickly shifted to, I could tell he needed a co-host. So I'm like, hey, man, you need a co-host? Yes, I need a co-host. All right, cool. Fuck it, man. I was going to do a podcast anyway. Let's do this. So we made that happen. And then Ace, who's behind the controls here, I was on his podcast, and I saw him editing all his own shit in real time, quicker than I've seen most people work at anything. And I was like, I need an engineer. I don't want to push the buttons. I don't know what the fuck these buttons do. I don't want to learn what these buttons do. So I'm going to have someone who does that for me and is better at that and lets me do what I need to do, right? And I reach out to Ace. I'm like, hey, dude, I have a podcast. I have a co-host. I need someone to be the producer. What do you think? He was down right away. So bam, within of the first conversation to right where I'm sitting right now was maybe 2 weeks. We all said yes within about 4 days. We had gear set up in a week, filmed the first episode. Justin calls us, hey, dude, I can't be part of this project anymore. What? Hey, man, my work, they're not cool with it. It's not worth me risking my job, risking my, whatever. And I totally respect that. I get it. I've been in that position before. It's not something that he wanted to not do. He just couldn't. Totally respectable, right? But instantly I'm down to, well, fuck. Now it's just me in a format where it's supposed to be me and him talking to each other, interviewing a guest. Now it's just me talking to fucking the wall and Ace here. And now it's just like, all right, let's make this work. So that's the origin story. We had the first episode. In fact, here's my book. It's kind of cool. I got LegalZoom, got the whole S-Corp set up. Got all the legal documents set up, and I think right now he's still part of the company. So it's all this should happen pretty quickly, right? But bottom line, it's me and Ace. It's going to stay me and Ace. Might have some reoccurring guests here and there, but like it's me and him and all of our guests, right? So that's the origin story. I thought that was kind of cool. Maybe we can dice it up for a cool reel, get some clicks out of that, But more importantly, what's this podcast going to be about, right? Like, what the fuck am I going to talk about? What the fuck do you guys care about what I say, right? Well, it's called Financial Advisory, not official financial advice, obviously. I really like the logo. Kind of came up with that. A very good friend of mine, Alex, mentioned the name. We were kind of come up with different names. I had some other ones picked out, and he mentioned that name and it just stuck with me. It's kind of like going back to Metallica and Lars when Buddy recommends a bunch of names and Lars keeps Metallica for himself, right? Where, like I recognize the name financial advisor would be really cool when Alex was like spitballing a bunch of different names, like, oh, that one sticks out. And the logo was like, oh, that's an easy logo. It's like, remember the parental advisory stickers when I was a kid, and all my favorite CDs would have that sticker on it, which meant it was a cool record. Just so this it all came together pretty quickly, man. But what's it about? So by no means is it financial advice. I'm never gonna, agree I will never openly come out and say this is advice, you should do this. All we're gonna talk about is how I made my money, how I've fucked off some money, how I'm gonna keep money, and how I'm gonna make more money, right? It doesn't mean you should do what I'm doing. In fact, I wouldn't do what I'm doing sometimes. Like some of the shit I've done it's the opposite. Here's some recommendation. Don't do this. It's not, I owned a gym. It failed. It's tough. Own a roofing company. It failed. It was tough. Like learn from my mistakes too. And all my guests that we're going to see in the future, they're all going to have a certain level of success, that they got them to a certain level of, hey, they made it. And maybe some are happy where they're at, but most of my guests are not going to be happy where they're at. They made it. And most people that are looking at us are saying, hey man, I wish I could be where they're at. Right? But doesn't mean we're happy where we are. And if you get to our level, you shouldn't stop. So that's the goal. That's the whole premise of this whole show is, how'd you make your money? How'd you lose money? How you keeping money? How you making more money? That's it. So the terminology of financial advisory is just a play on words. That was a badass logo. That's all it is. Other than that, man, that's kind of the gist of it. Probably some dick jokes, probably some things that, officially shouldn't be out there as far as like official financial stuff or, uptight, but that's not who I am, man. That's not how I'm ever going to be. We'll get into the company that I work for and why they recruited me and why I agreed to come over. And a lot of that has to do with my freedom that I didn't have at the previous firm. So I'm never going to, I'm pretty smart about what to say and what not to say, right? But I'm never going to listen to someone say, hey, you can't talk about this topic. You can't say that. Like if I can't do that, I'm not going to have a show. It's not worth it to me. I don't need this podcast. I want this podcast, and I'm not going to have some dickbag telling me I can't say shit or you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. Like if I say gay, I mean silly, stupid, funny. I don't mean homosexual, right? I'm not that way. But I'm not going to have somebody in a suit and tie say, "Oh, you can't say that was gay." That's not what I mean. And anybody listening to me will understand that. So that's the gist of this whole show, man. Freedom of speech, fuckery, some good advice, some bad advice, not legal advice, not official financial advice. But man, if you guys follow my Instagram or you guys see what I'm doing, like I've got some pretty cool stories. Those cars didn't fall out of the sky. I've done some pretty cool shit to get where I'm at. And hopefully the guests I bring on help me get to that next level. That's the whole goal, man. So I'm going to turn it over to Ace, have him talk about his little story, talk about where he's at and stuff and what brings him to this podcast and how I approached him. Maybe he has a different perspective as to how it all unfolded, right? The story I just told you guys is how I perceived it. But I want to hear from Ace how he perceives it.
Yeah, thanks. The story is pretty similar to how you essentially spoke about it. I'd say from me, I guess just the way I've sort of been working for the past 2 to 3 years, I tend to try to look at, opportunity the most. So
sure.
When I had you on for my podcast as a guest, diving into your life story and how you came about and all that kind of thing was really, really interesting. And
not to cut you off, I want to let everyone know, when I was on his podcast, it may have been the 5th or 6th one, maybe more. I'm kind of losing track. I've been on a few. He asked me some questions I've never been asked before, and it was awesome. And it was I almost brought the tears a couple different times. It's some really personal shit. Anyhow, really impressive what he did. So I'll make sure you highlight that because that was really cool. And I mean that. And I've told him this in private too. So
yeah, well, yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's the whole essence of the podcast, but I appreciate that. Nonetheless, what I essentially saw was you called me up. You're like, hey, I need some advice on, some gear that I want to get, some stuff I want to do for this podcast I want to be a part of, da-da-da-da. And so one thing led to another. We all met up. We discussed. Then we all came to the conclusion it'd be best if we all just worked together. And for me, I mean, this is an opportunity for me to not only be a part of a podcast that will grow, but
It's gonna be
just to
fucking huge.
meeting that people.
It's gonna be huge.
Yeah, it is gonna.
huge.
It is definitely gonna be huge.
Ace,
But
you're like, boom, bring that up, Ace. You're gonna be like Jamie 2.0.
yeah, on Joe Rogan's podcast, and even more so than the fact that this is going to be a successful podcast, I also saw the opportunity with the people that are going to come onto this podcast. Just being able to meet new people and being there firsthand, understanding what they went through, just all these people that you see on social media that are, doing it well, these are the type of people we're going to have on. So it's like being able to be around those types of people. And I just realized it was the next way for me to level up more so than just, forget the money, forget all that kind of stuff. It's just surrounding yourself around people who are doing better than you doesn't do anything except help you. So that's also like the biggest sort of takeaway I'm taking away from this. So
and keep that in mind, people. I mean, that's a good point. Like, just be in the right room sometimes, right? You never know. Fuck, he may have somebody on this podcast and they need someone to get moved, right? They may need someone to move. So right there, he's got a connection. Hey, I got a moving company. Bam, that's easy. First day shit ROI. But what if that person needs someone to move and then they need something else? What if they need an engineer or they need some technical stuff? Or who knows what the opportunity cost sometimes is far outweighs the actual physical cost. So kudos to him. He's a young dude, man. I'm 37. Ace is 23. I didn't have a me coming up. I was out there just raw dogging it, blazing my own trail. Still am, right? And I've hired a coach and things like that. But like as far as a true a peer, and I don't want to discredit my coach because that's what I pay him to do, right? But I don't have anybody that I don't pay for that. And him and I are close, right? But there's a financial, obligation there, and that's cool, and it is what it is. But to have someone for free in my life, like I don't have that, right? So Ace has that now, right? And it's invaluable. So all I could say is everybody who has someone out there, man, like donate some time, be in the right room, hang out for a while, right? This podcast is not making any money. This is not making anybody any money right now. One day it may, and then one day it'll pay off for both of us, right? But right now it's not. And he's taking the risk to be here, push the buttons, do all the shit that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And that could pay off for him in a huge way. So keep that in mind out there. That's our first little bit of advice maybe is like opportunity cost, right?
100%. And I think what's going to be most important for people to understand is first and foremost your story as well. So why don't you dive into, because I know your story personally, but it's a very off and beaten path type of story.
Hey, don't follow me, you won't make it. It's wild.
So tell everybody how you got into where you are today, where you started, etc.
Well, how I got here today is better explained if I tell you where I came from. So I came from building power lines. Built power lines most of my adult life. So graduated high school 2007. And through high school, I wanted to be an electrician, or so I thought. So I took all the courses I could. I took ag. I took shop class. I took building trades. I took what I could in high school to prepare to be an electrician the moment I turned 18. I applied for the apprenticeship I was in high school. I remember because I had this fucking gray spot. What's that? Where's the gray spot at? This side or this side?
It's on that side, yep.
This right here?
Yep. This
little birthmark here. I had that when I was 17. It's grown a little bit. I was 17 fucking years old, and I go to apply for the electrical apprenticeship, local 461 in Aurora, Illinois, and they gave me shit for that. So I remember that. So I was 17. So I was still in high school. I was a senior in high school, applied for that apprenticeship, and they're like, okay, cool, you'll hear from us, blah, blah, blah. Well, when I left there, they're like, hey, dude, it's probably going to be about a year or so till you hear from us. Like, work's not that great. That's how fast it usually goes, about a year. So I reach out, and I was dating a girl at the time. Her father was a big shot at Caterpillar. Shout out to Bob Kale. Actually, he just passed away, so rest in peace, Bob Kale. And he worked at Cat. He was awesome. He was actually a father figure to me in high school. So I was like, oh, cool, I'll go work at Caterpillar for a little while. Make some decent money out of high school. Instead of fucking it off working at Subway, I can go work as a welder, make some decent money. So I did. So I graduated high school on May 25th or so, maybe May 28th, whatever the fuck it was, 2004, end of May. June 15th, I started at Caterpillar. And I don't know why I remember the date, but I always remember dates. That's just weird about me. So I started going, and right away,